is to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and in creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide. We are a nonprofit organization. We do research, education, convening. And one of the things that we do a lot of is something you're going to see today, which is our providing strategic advice to sponsors on land use issues or development issues. We do this a lot for public agencies and for nonprofits. It is a fee-based program, and we have done this since 1947, and frankly it's a national program, but we started it here in Los Angeles because we are the creative capital of the world and we start everything. Our panel members work for food, and the bid has provided them with a lot of food in the last day and a half. Our panelists are experts in real estate development and land use planning, design, financing, and economic development. And we typically, depending on what problem we have been presented with, try to put together a panel that can specifically address those issues. And we are very, very pleased with the panel that we have put together today, who have worked very well and have eaten very well. I again want to thank you all. I specifically want to thank the board of the South Park bid and Jessica Law, whom I have come to know in the past couple of days, and she is my new best friend, and she's really cute, so I'm going to hang out with her. But I would like to turn the program over to Jessica now, to tell you how much we appreciate being here and how grateful we are to your fabulous board.
Thank you, Gail. I can't believe Gail Goldberg just introduced me. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here today, and I'd first like to start by recognizing our gracious host, the California Hospital Medical Center, for hosting us here today. Where's Nate and Teresa, his team? Nate's in the back. He's the president of the foundation. He's also an incoming board member. So thank you, Nate, for having us here today. Am I messing with the PowerPoint? On behalf of the South Park BID and the Urban Land Institute, we are absolutely thrilled that so many of you have come here today, representing a wide variety of backgrounds and disciplines. What brings us all here today is a shared commitment and passion for South Park. Home to iconic institutions such as the Staples Center, LA Live, the Convention Center, and the California Medical Hospital, South Park is also becoming known for the organizations that make it a sustainable neighborhood, such as the Metro Charter School, various vibrant religious institutions, the first downtown Girl Scout troop, gourmet restaurants, and top-of-the-line condos and apartments. We're also looking forward to the many positive projects that are in the pipeline, including the My Figueroa project, the potential streetcar, and I know what is on everyone's mind, the potential for a new NFL stadium at Farmers Field. The promise and opportunity that South Park is poised to seize is not in question. With large vacant lots selling at record prices, South Park is positioned the place to be in the city of Los Angeles. Today, we are here to discuss how the bid and community can continue to support this vision. Since the start of this year, the bid has renewed its sense of purpose and mission. We've redone our branding and logo, invested in new technologies and equipment to improve our efficiency and our ability to act as community resource, been proactively working with the city and developers on items such as bringing a park to the neighborhood, farmers market, and cultivating an identity for the district with banners, tables, chairs, and umbrellas, all to come later this year. But looking forward to the future, we realized we needed expert advice on how to harness all of this energy, opportunity, and ideas into a comprehensive action plan. This is what led us to Gail and the Urban Land Institute, the nation's premier thought leader on best practices related to planning, land use, and economic development initiatives. We hired ULI several months ago to embark on what they've called and explained here today, the Technical Assistance Panel, or TAP study, on the South Park neighborhood. Led by Executive Director Gail Goldberg and her wonderful and outstanding associate, Matthew Severson, ULI assembled a top-notch group of diverse volunteer experts, all here today and led by the chair, Amy Bodek, to take an in-depth look at South Park and make recommendations both large and small about what the bid can continue to do to help South Park reach its full potential. The panel is here today to offer their preliminary findings and will produce a report over the next few weeks, which we plan on sharing formally at our annual meeting on December 12th, also here at the hospital. Write that down. But before I turn it over to Amy, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge everyone in this room and for the role that each of you have played in helping us get to the point we are today. Notably, the TAP panel volunteers, the ULI staff, and the 11 individuals who took time out of their schedule yesterday to participate in the interview. But finally, before we move on, I truly feel like I have the greatest and most exciting job in the world, and that absolutely wouldn't be the case if it wasn't for our first-rate board of directors, led by Robin Beaker, and I believe we have Bob Wente and Shelby Jordan also here. Would you guys just stand up? And this group, I'd really like to acknowledge. They are quite an outstanding group. And last but not least is the South Park bid staff, who every day come in with a great attitude, smile on their face, and looking at ways to make South Park a more clean, safe, and desirable place to be. So I'm going to embarrass them for a moment and ask that Amanda, Dennis, Sharon, who's out front, and Jermaine, and do we have Carla and Milan from the clean team here? To stand up, and please, these people work tirelessly for South Park. Thank you, guys. Our fearless team. With that, I'd like to thank each of you again for being here, and I have the pleasure of introducing our TAP chair, Amy Bodek. Amy, for those who aren't aware, is the director of the Long Beach Development Services Department with over 250 employees and an operating budget of $231 million. She oversees all development-related functions to the city of Long Beach. She also serves as the president of the Long Beach Housing Development Company, the city's wholly owned affordable housing nonprofit corporation. Her background is in urban planning, redevelopment, and real estate transactions. Ms. Bodek holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Design from Cornell, a Master's of Urban Planning from NYU, and a Certificate in Landscape Architecture from the University of Southern California. Freudian slip. UCLA. She also holds... Sorry about that. My alma mater, obviously. She also holds a registration as a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners. She has been an absolute treasure to South Park, and she's led this group of highly esteemed panelists. And I'm going to turn it over to you to, for the first time myself, hearing the recommendations that you guys have for us. Thank you so much.
I thank you for that introduction, Jessica. I do want to say that Jessica, to me, epitomizes everything that a bid executive director should be: pragmatic, energetic, involved, and very, very interested personally and professionally in the success of the district that she's responsible for. So we've greatly enjoyed this assignment. I do have the pleasure of introducing to you this panel. I have spent, we were joking earlier, we spent about a month in the last day and a half getting to know each other with the price of food and drink, I should say. And we have an amazing panel that I'm so pleased to be able to share with you their experiences and their recommendations. We have Juan Bagazzo, who is a principal at Johnson Fain, Alan Coton, who is a adjunct professor or lecturer at that other school that I didn't go to, with Alan Coton and Associates, Craig Lawson, who has his own firm, Craig Lawson and Company, Jan Dyer, who's a principal at Mia Lair and Associates and was my colleague at that UCLA Landscape Architecture program, Sherry Rudnick with BAE Urban Economics, which used to be Bay Area Economics, who's expanding their reach to Southern California. Jim Sir, who also has his own company, James Sir and Associates, and then Elizabeth Wandell with Gensler Architects. So we did get together. I cannot tell you how hard this group worked, and I do want to give them all a plug and a thank you for making my job easier As chair, my job is to get to the presentation. And that sounds pretty simple, but it is an extremely, extremely difficult task. We were blessed with being able to interview the board members, to interview individual stakeholders, and then we basically kicked them out of the room. And that's where the fun began. So the bid did give us quite a task. We've consolidated their questions into these main questions that really dealt with the future of the bid. It deals with what are the appropriate land uses in the area, and how do we encourage developers to continue along that path and bring forth those land uses that are going to be extremely beneficial to the South Park area, but also to the whole of downtown LA. But with development comes a need for basic services, and we need to understand what those basic services are and how we can amenitize the area for all of the users of South Park, whether you're a resident or a worker or just passing through for a convention center or for a special event. Clearly, the bid has within it a large institutional user on the western side, which is the Convention Center and the Staples Center. So how do they maximize and participate in encouraging appropriate development that still supports that economic engine? But also, there's a dearth of green space in the bid, and so we really did look at how we can make those transitional connections, both on an interim as well as a permanent basis, not only for the folks of South Park, but for the greater downtown greening, if you will. And then those connections, they don't necessarily have to be green space connections, but how do we connect better the disparate sides of the bid? So you're all familiar with this. You're far more familiar with it than we are, although we spent the month focusing on it in the last 2 days. So here's the outline of it. Clearly the Convention Center, Staples Center, Hope Street goes down here. 11 Luma Evo. I think that used to be the parking lot I used to park in for the Staples Center. But it is quite a vibrant mix of uses, and clearly it has evolved greatly over the past 12 years. It's getting to be very urban, very contemporary, has that mix of uses with the hospital as a significant institutional user and a daily employer that we really do need to talk about and capture, as well as the periodic events that occur here and then the entertainment zone that's going here. But you also have opportunities that we're going to be talking about. And you also have opportunities in your existing building stock that we also want to encourage. We're not just here today to encourage new development. We are here today to look at the bones of what you have at South Park and how we can capitalize on those bones as well. So we ended up coming up with 5 major themes for our recommendations. As Jessica said, we will be producing those recommendations in a report that will be published and provided to the bid for distribution and availability. But our focus was on the land use issue. What are the appropriate land uses and how we implement those land uses within the mix of your existing bones of development patterns. What do we do with that public realm? Because it really is becoming the third space in everybody's lives. If you're not living or working there, you're transiting there, you are really moving around in those public realms. Economic development and the role that the bid really needs to play in economic development for the South Park area. The role of transit and circulation, and then clearly the role of advocacy, which is the most important role that the bid is actually going to play in a lot of these recommendations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Coton, and Alan's going to start talking with Craig Lawson about the land use theme.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about land uses, and the first and probably the most important thing I'm going to say is the top bullet, which is that by the way, an anecdote, I probably have the longest association with South Park of anybody here on this side of the table, since I was working for the CRA when the original South Park, as a consultant when the original South Park plan was adopted in the early 1980s. The market has spoken. It has dictated a use mix which is heavily dominated right now by the emphasis on residential. It makes the most money, But at the same time, if the community is going to be balanced, we have to make sure that the street level uses provide for future retail. We also probably need to look at some of the standards that don't work really well in South Park, most notably the tree standards, and consider possibly finding ways to satisfy the tree requirements off-site. We also need very much to think about finding valid uses for our retail space if there is no immediate demand for retail uses. And that leads to the next one, which is to encourage retail realistically. That involves two things. One is that we build the retail, but we have to find good interim uses sometimes before the full mature market materializes to use it. But it also means that we have to think a little bit about at least creating the possibility of larger footprint retail, because the retail under apartments doesn't work for some of the larger tenants, such as Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, or large footprint restaurants. Finally, we ought to think about possibly expanding the adaptive reuse ordinance so it can be used for commercial and retail uses. Now, a key role for the South Park bid is to make development easier and faster. To accomplish this, the district should track and update current regulations, proposed regulations, etc. And the living expert on that topic is Craig Lawson, who's going to tell you a little bit about how complicated it is.
Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. I'm Craig Lawson. I'm a land use consultant who's worked on projects in the South Park area for many years with people like John Whitaker and Ted Tanner and others who committed a good part of their professional life to improving downtown and the South Park area. We took a look at some of the existing and proposed land use policies, and this is not a complete list, this is just the highlights of plans and policies that are in place now. Some of them are changing, some of them are evolving, but they all have an impact on what's happening in South Park. The Central City Community Plan, which was last updated in 1998, the Downtown Design Guidelines, fairly recently adopted, but are now being implemented fairly strongly in relation to downtown projects. The LA SCD specific plan, which is focused on LA Live, Staples Center, and the development parcels around there, including Fig South and Fig Central, a very important element which has its own design guidelines and streetscape standards. Others, the South Park bid management plan, the disposition development agreements, these were done by CRA on several projects and still have some viability. And the South Park streetscape plan, which was an example of streetscape improvements that was done around the 11 Luma and Evo project, was put into a plan that could be used for other blocks. Looking at proposed plans, we have the Central City Community Plan update, which is coming down the line. We have some planners here who are working on that. The MyFig, the Figueroa Corridor improvements, if you don't know this project, you should look it up online. This is significant improvements to the Figueroa Corridor. There's money to carry these improvements out. You'll be seeing a lot of changes there. The LA Streetcar Plan, which we've all heard about, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further. Councilman Weezar's motion, which includes an intercontrol ordinance, an ICO for low-rise development, trying to encourage more high-rise buildings. Proposal by the City Council's Chief Legislative Analyst to provide incentives for more hotel development, the LA Convention Center Action Plan, and of course the Farmers Field EIR and the related plan that was done for that, which includes improving the convention center. So this is just really, again, the highlights of things that are affecting South Park. There's a lot more, but we wanted to raise these to your attention. All of these are available. If you need to see copies of any of these documents, the bid can provide them to you, or we can get them to you. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Alan.
Let's continue a little bit with land use. We need to create destination uses that people want to come to South Park other than and to complement LA Live. This ties to a whole idea of, which we're going to discuss later, creating better east-west connections across South Park. Part of the destination creation and mixed-use development should include investigation and encouragement of older buildings for creative office use. We think that there's a potential here. This ties a little bit back to the earlier recommendation that we pursue an expansion of the adaptive reuse ordinance so it applies to commercial as well as to residential, which is all it covers right now. We should also very much continue to encourage hotel development. The diagram, whoops, that was a mistake. I got to get the pointer part here. The diagrams show you two different ways to provide the 4,000 hotel rooms. We can either have two very big ones, or four very big ones rather, or what is that, 20 small ones, Elizabeth? But it gives you some idea of the challenge that faces us in creating those hotels. We would suggest, by the way, that you, as part of this, that you examine and encourage the continuing idea that hotels have a net economic development value, a very substantial one, even if you share a very large amount of the transient occupancy tax with the hotel developer. Finally, the issue has been raised in our interviews and elsewhere of how you get more retail south of Pico. And my view of that is you don't, not in the near term, because the critical mass of development is not there. The real challenge is to create some good north-south connections that make it easier to flow back and forth to the retail that is developing. And with that, we move from land use to the public realm, and Elizabeth Wendell. And Juan.
So what you're looking at here is a diagram showing all the surface parking lots in the South Park area. The red dotted line is the bid boundary. So granted, a lot of these lots have been bought up and are under entitlements for new buildings, and that's great. But what we're looking at is a near-term strategy for dealing with the openness and the disconnection between these great pockets of activity, but the fact that you have to kind of walk past these really large open lots. So we think that the South Park bid should leverage projects that are already funded and use them to inspire new Great Street Initiative designations. We have the MyFig project, which is looking at the Figueroa Street all the way south through the whole South Park area. The LA streetcar network, which comes from Broadway across 11th Street and then up Figueroa Street. I guess I should show that here. So it comes down Broadway, across 11th, and then up Figueroa. And if you haven't heard of the Great Street Initiative, it's a new initiative from Mayor Garcetti where all of the departments will be working together to formulate these streetscapes that are working together with each other. So you won't have pipes being dug up on new streets that have just been laid down. Everything's going to be coordinated together, but it's a good opportunity to get some really great pedestrian-friendly streets going. And so we recommend, Hope Street, which is here, and Pico as the two streets that the South Park should put forward as the Great Street Initiative streets. So from that, let's go on to Juan.
All of you probably know quite a bit about this, but and obviously all of us that work in LA are familiar with South Park. In the last day and a half of walking the streets and really looking carefully at the South Park area, we realized that the underlying bone structure, under this sort of land use discussion that we're having, obviously there has to be a connective tissue. And the underlying bone structure of South Park is actually a very good one. There was the streets and the alleys, the existing alleys, and the potential for actually extending that system whether it's through new alleys. They don't necessarily have to be connected from one block to another, that they can meander. That is, we think, an important objective in terms of reinforcing that walkability and the special quality that South Park has. It already has it. It's really about seizing the opportunity and making it better. Elizabeth already mentioned, as a part of that, we think certainly that Hope Street is a place where a lot of attention could be put. We're not really discovering it. Hope Street historically was envisioned as the main connection of South Park to the north of the financial district. It is a street that dead ends on both sides. It's a quiet street. There is, in terms of traffic capacity, there is less traffic on that street than others. So it's the perfect place for creating an identity in something that really could thread through the entire South Park area. So this next slide shows, again, in the realm of about a day and a half of work, basic idea of in this case, taking the South Park area as a site, what we called a park-to-park connection. The Grand Hope Park, obviously, is just outside the bid, but we think it's still important. It's a historic piece. Lawrence Halpern, famous landscape architect, designed it. It has notoriety, and it's a great park. It should be seized as a sort of an anchor to the north, perhaps. There's a smaller park at Venice in Hope at the end that is underutilized, perhaps. It has great opportunity. It could be better. And then we think in the development in South Park, we should, in the bid, really, should look with developers, look at opportunities of creating new parks. We just drew here a quarter-mile walking radius from these existing parks, and you can see that on the north and south, we're pretty good, but in the middle, perhaps there could be an opportunity of creating new park opportunities. There is an example of Library Square of how that can happen. Library Square actually happened because of Library Tower. There's air transfer development rights. There are mechanisms in place that could be used in order to create public space as a part of a development like this. And on the right here, we just looked at some potential alternatives of looking at Hope Street. There's a more extensive study and exercise that has to be done on these. We liked what the hospital has done across, right out the door. The idea of angled parking, perhaps, is something that should be looked at. It's an opportunity. It's traffic calming. It creates placemaking. You actually, when you go out here at the door, you almost feel like you're in a different place. So more of that could happen. The idea of meandering the road right away. We're not trying to take cars away. I think pedestrian malls are not really the right answer. Cars and people can mix. You just have to tame the interaction between them. That's another alternative. Or creating parklets. There's an initiative in the city. The city's done test scenarios of parklets along the street, just taking some parking spaces, whether they're linear or at the corners. Those are opportunities that can happen here. Next, we'll talk about interim measures and the opportunities for more than the streets.
So while we see the vision for the bid area of South Park, and actually all of South Park, as an opportunity to create a green, vibrant, connected neighborhood with a variety of services and transit opportunities, we also thought it was very important to take a look at the short term, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and what were some opportunities for some temporary or interim strategies as far as streetscapes and the parking lots go. So this diagram is very similar to one you saw earlier where all the parking lots were shown in orange. Now we're showing them in light green. So all of you developers and landowners out there, don't get nervous. We're not turning them all into parks as much as we would like to. But we do see these lots as opportunities to work with the development community and create enhanced streetscapes and the pedestrian environment within the bid area of South Park. So what would these temporary or interim measures be? The parking lots are a huge opportunity. The parking lots could be used as event spaces. They're flexible spaces. One idea that we had was to have sports clinics, perhaps work with Staples Center and some of the teams there and have some sports clinics on the weekends for the neighborhood and youth. What about a rubberized surface jogging trail around some of these parking lots with mile markers, so they're activated during the week when the parking lots are not full. Also, street trees and planting along the edges of the parking lots will bring down the scale of the space and be very quick improvements, if you will, to the neighborhood. Placemaking, the bid is already starting this. We thought that the streets and doing some street amenities and street furniture, flexible, portable furniture, plantings is a great opportunity to get people engaged with the street, and bid is already working on this, so thumbs up to you. Events and programming, farmers markets, again, these parking lots are a huge opportunity when there's not an event going on where they're being used. So farmers markets and festivals, or food truck nights, all sorts of things that can happen in these parking lots. And then lastly, temporary street closures. Why not close down some streets for neighborhood events as well as connecting to larger citywide events such as Ciclavia? So these images give you some ideas of some of the things that we think could happen in the parking lots and along the street edges in an interim fashion. So long-term measures, again, a green, vibrant, connected neighborhood with a big, bold design vision. A neighborhood that has its own identity, but yet complements the identity of the sports and entertainment district that we're adjacent to. And how do we get there? Well, we thought one way to actually kick that off would be to have a very high-level design competition within the South Park bid. And that would be to create a signature project, a destination, perhaps something not unlike was done in New York City for the High Line in the meatpacking district. We think the other long-term opportunity is to work with the developers, so as projects unfold and developments are planned, we can continue to create open space and enhance the pedestrian realm. Thank you.
Thank you. So the bid is already hard at work on its core mission of clean and safe, and we've talked about some of these other ideas in terms of design enhancements the bid can advocate. We think the bid also can play another role. It's very important in terms of economic development. And first and foremost, the bid should, we would recommend, collect and maintain district-specific data. You have an opportunity, because you are providing services that the city is not. You have a very loud voice, recognized at City Hall. You can further that and accomplish marketing purposes for South Park by having data about South Park on its own. So to be able to better serve your residents and businesses by knowing who they are. Also an inventory of your existing tenants that will help you to analyze trends and see what desired uses are still market voids. And then secondly, we think that, as Alan had mentioned earlier, the ground level retail spaces in many of the buildings do not initially have sufficient demand to make for viable rental with what one would normally want to have credit tenants. And we think that an advisory group of brokers, developers, and users can be created that will help to develop a market, if you will, for interim uses, holding pattern for these ground level retail spaces. Confidentiality is very important. What the bid should seek to do is understand from the property owners what the minimum operating expense carrying costs are for these spaces and to identify sources of subsidy that can allow either for tenants that really can pay no rent or tenants that can maybe pay just the minimum operating expenses to come in and occupy the space and help to achieve activity. Older buildings, as Alan also mentioned earlier, can and should be used, and the bid can take an important role in advocating their use as creative office space, as galleries, as photo studios, but in any event, these should not be left vacant. They should not be remaining as broken teeth in the streetscape.
And just to add to that, we think that pop-up shops and incubators, which are happening around California successfully, are a great way to address this issue. The City of Long Beach and the City of Oakland has implemented these pop-up programs that allows retailers who don't have the capital to put forward deposits and startup costs, but they activate the space. They come in, they reduce vacancy, and they come in for short periods of time, and we think that that would be really useful here. And then we also think that the bid could take a few steps that would be very beneficial to the existing residents and businesses and workers. Creating an identity that is pervasive throughout. If you look around downtown and you think about the historic core and the arts district, these are areas that have very distinct identities. We think South Park has its own unique identity that should be fleshed out and should be integrated throughout everything that happens here and that the bid undertakes. Creating events and programs for residents that fit with this identity and can draw people from adjoining neighborhoods. Again, this could be farmers markets that also activate parking lots when they're not full, and getting to some of these design interim uses. Could be done around pets, family-friendly events, just really catering towards the residents. And then we think that the South Park residents would appreciate an app that they can use and look at every morning that lists the events going on, whether they're at Staples Center or if there's filming and there's a street closure, that people could just look at their phone first thing in the morning and they could know, avoid Hope and 11th or what have you. That would also have an up-to-date list of existing restaurants and businesses and links to other useful apps and sites like Metro and other downtown events going on, and just sort of that one-stop shop for them. So with that, I think we're going to transit.
I rode the light rail this morning to downtown, so I'm the one that gets to talk about transit. We've talked about the metro station at Pico, a very important station. It's one of South Park's key assets. It provides access to the residential community as well as the Staples Center, the Convention Center, LA Live. The bid should be a strong advocate for improving that station, making it more accessible, making it larger, and doing that in the short term rather than waiting for the long term for that to happen. We talked very conceptually about 12th Street. 12th Street is a street that serves, essentially the street goes right into the Convention Center. It's otherwise one way going east. There may be an opportunity right at Flower to either close or vacate 12th Street so that it avoids the conflict there with vehicles, pedestrians, the train. Also creates room for expanding the station northward, while also maintaining access to the key development sites which are there, the Fig Central and the Fig South sites. There may be some opportunity there to look at conceptually how you make that better. We talked about enhancing the connection to the second station, which is just outside of the boundaries to the south, at the Grand Washington Metro Station. Identify some funding sources to augment lighting, pedestrian pathway amenities, just outside the boundaries, help to link South Park under the 10 freeway so that we can connect to LA Trade Tech, to USC, and to other activities that are happening along that corridor. We talked about the promoting the My Figueroa project as one of the initial great streets examples that Mayor Garcetti is going forward with, to publicize the improved streetscape, the north-south linkage, the use of 11th Street, and to advance Hope Street and Pico as corridors that we think would be candidates for great streets. And finally, to embrace the LA streetcar project. We're not sure when the streetcar is going to happen, but we think that the bid should provide advocacy for moving forward with the streetcar to support, again, the 11th Street and the Figueroa linkages that the streetcar will run on. And we should anticipate that it's going to take a while for this to be implemented, but it still is worth supporting. It would provide great benefit to this area. I think there's one more slide. Technology. Here, this is just an example of improving the pedestrian connection and experience at the Pico station. When you do get off at Pico, if you haven't ridden it, you should. You're essentially facing towards the east. Everything that you probably want to do is going to be towards the west, which is at LA Live, Staples Center, but when you get off, you're facing east. You have to reorient yourself, get around the station, and get back. There's got to be a better way, and I know we've seen it in Europe, we've seen it in other cities. There's some improvements that can be made there. We have one last section, which is on advocacy.
So ultimately, we think what the bid does best and its greatest role is using the bully pulpit for advocacy. We've heard over the last day and a half, and anyone who does business in real estate in Los Angeles, it comes as no surprise that the process is very messy. So we think that the South Park bid should join the other bids in advocating for getting things through the quagmire and just keeping momentum going behind projects in your area. We think that that would be very powerful. We also think, as Recode LA, the first chapter to come out is going to be about downtown. We think that that's an opportunity for the South Park bid and the other bids to really advocate to the city that the downtown community plan should move forward quickly, be the first to move forward, keeping momentum again, and that with that community plan there should be a program EIR. Because with the program EIR, it brings more certainty to the development community, it adds a lot of value, and across the board we just think that would be a very, very valuable tool. In addition, we think that the South Park bid should get ahead of citywide initiatives. We've heard a lot about great streets today, and so rather than waiting, we think go ahead and plan which streets you want to be next in that project. You heard earlier, we think Hope and Pico. People Street, another one that's gotten less attention, that's the city and DOT together, that allows people or businesses or any nonprofit to nominate unused asphalt for bike corrals or parklets or plazas. And so we think it would be a really good idea to sort of get out ahead of that, get active, get the community engaged, think about what those areas should be in your bid, and sort of not wait on that.
Thank you, Sherry, Craig. So we're going to bring this to a close. You have been very diligent in your attention to us. We've had the easy job. We just kind of did speed dating for a day and a half. These are the folks we dated. I do want to extend a special thanks to them for their role and involvement in quickly informing us of their perspectives and their perspective on the issues that are facing you all, both as residents and as employers or as employees. in summary, really, we do believe that there is clearly a vision for South Park. It has been stated again and again and again. You are on the cusp of some major new development in the next 5 to 10 years. And the biggest role for the bid is really to capture that momentum and to work with all of its constituents to create the balanced neighborhood that you're all expecting and that you are all expecting to be able to live and work and frankly play in. So we don't expect the bid to take responsibility for each individual development. We don't believe that that is feasible. We are here stating what the vision is as we heard it, but we are also trying to very strategically provide implementable action items that the bid can do over the next 1 to 3 years, still keeping in mind what that long-term vision is going to be for South Park. So with that, on behalf of the panel, we thank you very, very much, and we are going to open it up for questions. This is the only mobile mic that we have, so you can state your question. I'll repeat it, and I'll assign somebody to answer it. Good, no questions. Ma'am?
Hi. When you were talking about vacating 12th Street, you said to the east of the station. Did you mean to the west toward the convention center?
So the question is vacation of 12th Street, and your answer is yes. We are talking about the potential vacation of South Street
To the convention
to
center.
the west, to the convention center and the stables.
We talked,
That makes sense.
we looked at it both ways, and with the lack of time, we didn't have a chance to really analyze it. But we noticed in walking around, and for people that drive here, there's a tremendous conflict at 12th and Flower, where the light rail comes up. There's a lot going on. For those people that are heading south on Flower, they want to make a left turn going east on 12th. First of all, there aren't that many people that make that move, but for those who do, it is really a challenge to make that turn, and it's probably dangerous. The question is, how many people actually need that to make that turn? How many people are using that segment of 12? How many are using it as it approaches the convention center? As Ted Tanner told us, they're going to try to activate the Gilbert Lindsay Plaza at the convention center, and that may actually change the access point as you come into the convention center. So the whole reason for having that street aimed towards the center may change. So it's a futuristic look at some opportunities there. 12th Street might be something that we can study in the future.
I think your slide just had the wrong word.
It was done about an hour ago.
I was trying to understand what it said. I agree with what you said.
The idea's well cooked, though.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, the idea's well cooked.
Definitely.
Ma'am, yes?
I'm with the City of Los Angeles, and we have a meeting, the LA Bid Consortium meeting, on the last Thursday of each month. And I was wondering if you'd like to, you mentioned lots of things that you'd like all the bids to support, if you'd like to come to one of those meetings and present those suggestions.
We do think it's very important that the bids get together and talk as a unified voice over common issues, particularly in all of the downtown core. So we'd be happy to share these recommendations with you and the report as well. Thank you. Saw a question over here, sir.
Some options were presented for Hope Street. I was wondering if you considered a pedestrian mall to be that identity project to have a major dynamic change for South Park, like the 3rd Street Promenade did for San Juan.
So the question is related to Hope Street and the possibility and feasibility of converting it into a full pedestrian mall similar to the 3rd Street Promenade. So I'm going to ask Juan to take a stab at starting that one.
We talked about it. I think there are plenty of examples in the nation where streets have been pedestrianized by being closed, only to try to be reopened for traffic a few years later. We don't think that isolating cars and people is necessarily the right solution for this. First of all, there are a lot of properties that access off of Hope, so you have to realize that has to be dealt with. Again, going back to the basic premise of picking that street, it is the street that is dead end. I mean, all of you know it better than probably all of us that spend more time here. It is a quieter street compared to Grand or Figueroa, certainly. And it can still be that quiet street. So the ideas were really about how do you sort of tame the car and still make sure that pedestrians are a priority. And that's why these alternatives will
But we could perhaps consider and work with the
Temporary.
community on one-way.
Correct.
One-way is a way of balancing pedestrian and vehicular, things like that.
And then certainly, I think as a part of the idea of temporary closures of streets, that's certainly in play during times. If there's a festival, certainly there can be two streets, two lengths, closed, or maybe the entire length. Maybe ciclovia. We were just talking about that earlier this morning. Ciclovia has been really more about downtown to the west kind of connection. Maybe there should be a promotion for get to know your downtown ciclovia, where it is more about the north-south and really involves South Park as a way to get people to come here and see really what the beginnings of a wonderful place that you have here. So that's one way to create identity. Anybody else?
Related to that, actually, is also the ability to temporarily close streets, adding bollards into the infrastructure so you can try them out. We are not advocating that you come out of the box with a big vision, but instead you take incremental steps, not only on Hope, but on some of our other connections, where you can always get bollards installed and then try out closures, and that might be something that we end up advocating for 12th Street. I saw a question back there, ma'am.
I'm really impressed with the amount of work that you've done in 2 days. But my question is, and so I don't expect you to have the answer, but when you talked about the identity and how other districts like the Historic Core and Arts District have their identity, what do you, if you had to describe what you think the identity of South Park is now and where you see it going?
I'm going to start this off, and then I'm going to ask others to jump in, because we certainly do think that it's going to be somewhere around here. We certainly do think that South Park has an identity, and frankly, that identity is the mixed-use neighborhood of downtown LA, first and foremost. But you have the opportunity and the bones to capitalize on this idea of being the sustainable mixed-use community in South Park. You don't have to necessarily be known as the hospital district or as the entertainment district. You have all of these different types of uses that you really should be capitalizing on. So we did start to think about that and how you program events. Everybody knows that the arts district is a place to go. It's a destination to go. I'm not from the city of Los Angeles. I know that when somebody says arts district, I know exactly what they mean by that and where it is. So events and programming, maybe this becomes, the family-friendly district in downtown for all the street festivals that are related to families. Those things are going to grow and evolve as the development changes, but clearly understanding what your identity is to external users as well is very critical. Does anybody want to comment on that? Alan?
About 33 years ago, the South Park plan envisioned South Park as being a neighborhood. Almost uniquely among the districts we're talking about, it has neighborhood characteristics that are growing quite rapidly. And I think that if you look at the different parts of downtown, what is striking about South Park is it is the one that has the highest chance of being a sustained, large-scale residential development. And I would think that the analogs are somewhat similar to some of the really good downtown, higher-end neighborhoods in places like San Francisco, which become somewhat family-oriented, but they are neighborhoods. We are kind of unique among forgive me, I have a kind of historical perspective because this is what was intended and didn't happen for 25 years. But it ultimately did happen.
Sherry's going to add something to this.
So, in thinking about this, I too was thinking about the art district and the historic core and what people go there for, what the buildings look like, what it feels like. And the arts district is, you know, it's kind of gritty, it's industrial buildings converted. And so I started thinking about what does South Park look like? And it's cleaner, it's more luxurious, the restaurants are nicer. So it's not the arts district, which is kind of grittier. It's not the financial district, which is, you know, Morton's. It's South Park. It's nice, new, expensive housing, and I think that it is maybe the upscale neighborhood of downtown. Was my first thought, and certainly more family-oriented than any of the other neighborhoods downtown, or at least with that potential. So those were my initial thoughts, but I really think it's important for you all to determine what your identity is. It's not for us to say, here's your identity. I mean, certain things stand out, but that's really a task for you all to undertake.
I think one quick thought in terms of really capitalizing on all the assets that you have here. I think linking the hospital and the presence of the hospital in your neighborhood is also an important part of your identity. I think there is a big movement in the country for health and wellness. Hospitals really don't want people coming to them. They want to be out. So the idea of promoting open space, places where people can exercise, whether it's a running track around a parking lot as a temporary measure or something bigger than that, those are ingredients that could really add to the qualities of a neighborhood that I think were spoken about. And the other one, the quick one, which was quite a surprise to me, is the fact that yes, while the emphasis is on residential development, there is an appetite and there is demand for creative office space here in South Park. That shouldn't be shied away from, actually should be embraced. That is the future of where cities are going. Yes, we will have big buildings with big corporations, but a lot of the companies and a lot of the things that are starting now are about young people starting in a very small place in neighborhoods like this. And this could be the place where that can also happen.
John?
You know, Amy, one thing I don't think you mentioned was the importance of this Metro Charter School in enhancing this family environment. I mean, this is huge for what we've been trying to get for downtown residential as far as another amenity to make it work. And enhancing, I think most of us probably walked by these kids as we were walking in here. What a wonderful amenity that
It is a testament to the
And
initiative and the drive of the residents who are putting down roots and want to remain in this neighborhood that they're claiming as their own. So, you know, I think Jessica mentioned also the first Girl Scout troop in downtown LA. You know, that should be a badge, frankly, just for that. But yes, it's absolutely important that we do look at that. And just the value that the charter school plays in becoming an institution, and not just a place of learning, but as a place for the community to gather around, critically important. So I saw a question, ma'am.
Hi, going along with Juan's thought that you just finished, and filling the retail space. I know you guys didn't have a lot of time to talk about this, but do you think about maybe strategically partnering with neighboring universities to maybe their entrepreneurship programs to fill those spaces in that way?
We specifically thought about that, and in fact, FITM and USC were mentioned. We think that those represent a really superb opportunity for interim uses that would serve the needs of the neighborhood, could move out with relatively limited notice when real demand materialized and would animate the neighborhood. That's one of the very specific recommendations we have made.
Tanner Blackman from the Office of Councilmember Jose Guizar. Thank you all TAP members for your thoughtful analysis and for ULI and South Park Bid for putting this on. I see reflected in a lot of the recommendations, you know, a core of a lot of what the council members' vision for the area is as well. A big focus on streets and reusing public space and parks and in general livability. We were a big proponent of the Metro Charter School, and yes, a lot of this resonates. My question is kind of, it also though kind of reads as like a wish list of you should do this. To what extent do your recommendations touch on the sort of mandated capacity of the bid itself in order to sort of achieve these things in partnership with the city and what we can do to help better enable our community partners?
What does mandated capacity mean?
I can actually explain that to you. I just concluded a 3-year term in Long Beach as an executive board member on the downtown bid. So clearly there are very strict limits to the controls and the ability of the bid to spend money. You all voted for the bid. You all are paying for the bid. And you did that within the context of an approved management plan. So X% of the $1.8 million budget every year goes to clean and safe. X% goes towards street beautification, you know, yada, 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 down that list. It's a very, very prescribed management plan. We did discuss, you know, the challenges on how to implement some of these things. And we do recognize, and I want to reiterate that it's not necessarily the bid that's going to be actually implementing it. But the bid can clearly partner with foundations and organizations to get laundered money, if you will, or money that doesn't have strings attached to it to push forth some of these initiatives. There are ways that they can partner with the city. There are ways that they can partner with foundations, with Kaiser Permanente, with this existing hospital, to put forth grants for some of those wellness initiatives that meet their needs, but then also are implementing some of these transitory circulators throughout the downtown. So there are clearly ways that we did discuss on how they can push those initiatives forward, not necessarily having any negative influence on the management plan that's been approved.
One of the unique things we learned about the bid here in South Park is that it represents both commercial and residential interests. The voters within the bid are not just the store owners and the commercial owners, but they're also the residents who own condos in the South Park buildings. And that's relatively unique. We don't see that a lot in other jurisdictions. So as such, it's a great resource. It's a great resource for information, for demographics, for people who can help with some of the events and things that we're talking about. But in terms of advocacy, some of that may come from the council member's office, it may come from the mayor's office, it may come from Central City Association, which is an advocacy group. The bid has certain restrictions on that. But they can be a player, they can be part of this whole, the neighborhood, they can push these things forward. So.
Craig's reference to the fact that there's a large residential constituency in the bid, which is rather unusual since most bids are dominated by commercial property owners, also gives the bid another mission, which we tried to address, and I want to make that connection, which is as a critical source of information. We have a much larger numeric constituency than most bids do, and I think the bid has an affirmative and real potential role in distributing information on a very timely basis to the residents. Businessmen often have their own mechanisms for getting information. Residents tend to have fewer, and I think that's a critical role for the bid.
And Tanner, we also discussed, talking to the city about the resources, the Quimby resources, the parking meter resources, and making sure that those dollars that are collected in this district are flowing back to the district and are working on capital projects that are important not only to the bid, but clearly to the council offices. Sherry, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just to say that
you know, as we went through everything that we sort of made a direct recommendation for the bid to do, aside from advocacy, we thought about, does that tie back to clean and safe? Does that tie back to marketing? So we were very clear on that. I mean, I think certainly the data collection is marketing, and as is the app. And so we tried to keep that in the forefront of our mind in making these recommendations.
I think we've got a room for one or two more questions. Sir?
I just had a comment that I was on a panel involved in a convention center, and it was pointed out that the really last terrific hotel site is just east of Staples Center. And I don't know what's happening on the market, but the point was made, it's very beneficial if that were pushed for a large hotel. It may be the last shot for the block. And that the convention center is very important to the commercial activity, and hotels are important to the commercial activity of the convention center. And so any bid can do to hold the people required to at least a 500-room hotel there. Big impact to the future of this area.
And as you probably saw, you know, we did take the idea of needing hotel rooms pretty seriously in this. We were aware of and have the resources of the report that was just done for the convention center by ULI. And so we do really suggest that the bid does advocate for you know, appropriate development. I don't think we're ever going to get to am I going the right way? I don't think we're ever going to get to this. We hope not. Elizabeth first did it as one tower. It was a little significant. So, yeah, Craig.
Without going into depth, what's known as the Figueroa Central site, which is the one you're talking about, which is just across from Staples Center to the east, has been entitled for a large mixed-use development, which includes hotels, residential, retail. That project was not built for a lot of reasons because of the economy and others, but there's a lot of activity right now in terms of people looking at that site who may decide to either build that project or another project. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but I think, you know, stay tuned, and I think you'll see some things happening there in the near term.
Clearly, there's a need for more hotels, although the new Korean era will provide a significant increase to the inventory. But I think that it is interesting, and it's particularly important, and I've been involved in the thick of it for the last couple of years, that hotels don't work without some level of public support, usually in the form of some portion of the TOT, because costs continue to escalate more rapidly than revenues. But I think the city has developed and is continuing to develop a pretty rational and consistent policy for encouraging hotel development. And I think it's our only and our best hope of ever having a significant, a really good convention center.
So with that, I'm going to take, no? All right. So with that, I want to thank you. We're very cognizant of your time, that you came out here on a Friday afternoon to listen to this presentation. As we said earlier, we will be evolving these suggestions into a written report that we will be delivering to Jessica by the end of November. She will be presenting that report at their annual meeting in December. So I do thank you for your attention to this, and I would like to thank the panel who has done yeoman's work in the last year and a half.
Thank you, Amy. The lady, the queen, did a great job.